But this morning we've got Richard Yetsenga, who's the Chief Economist at ANZ Group, joining us. Richard, thanks so much for taking the time. Question to you, the last time we spoke, we were wondering what the playbook was. It seems like they're going to go ahead with the imposition of that 25% tariff. How do you think that India will likely respond? So far, it's been a measured response. What are the possible responses it can take?
Well, I think most economies have taken, at the end of the day, a measured response. If they've threatened things, often it was earlier in this tariff period, closer to April than today, and potentially maybe they've said some things behind closed doors, which we're not aware about in the public domain. So that seems to be the playbook that countries have settled on. My guess would be India follows that and tries to negotiate behind closed doors to end up with a deal that's less punitive than the tariffs that have come into effect now.
Richard, good morning, or good afternoon to you maybe. But in the interim period that details of any such negotiation for India or for some other nation emerges, is that a big issue for an economy like India, wherein exports to the US were what? Less than, I mean, in very low single digits, right? I mean, or not even that much. So will foreign voices who look at Indian economy and Indian growth look at this very negatively or otherwise?
You raise a good point. In fact, many is probably quite the wrong word. A number of economies are in a similar position to India. It's not about the direct impact. It's about the kind of signal about maybe a sense of losing favour with the US, being a little bit on the outer, of course, and a lot of the trade agreements the US is proposing to other economies have these transshipment penalties in them, which means if you thought you could perhaps end up with product in the US through a different route, they're keen to kind of close those off. So I think you're right. There's no reason for anyone today to think that India's outlook is demonstrably different, given this was expected anyway. But it does make it more difficult for India at the margin. The upside may be if it does prompt some liberalisation steps within India, which opens up markets and maybe break through some barriers which are proving difficult. I mean, that could be something which adds some kind of positives, a silver lining, if you like, to the cloud which is there at the moment.
Richard, in the past as well, you have mentioned, that when it comes to Asia, it does have a muscle memory, and this is when it comes to adapting challenges, right? Taking into consideration the tariffs with regards to India, what is the kind of new response that you would see with regards to the new tariff environment? Because India is trying its best, but if India has to adapt to these challenges, how do you see it moving?
The global economy has been shifting really since 2016 on tariffs. So we're nearly a decade into this new environment. And it hasn't just been tariffs, of course. It's been kind of the geostrategic flux, which has made countries focus more on the supply chains. India does have the additional challenge of energy imports and where those might go over the period ahead, given the apparent US concern about some of India's energy imports. But even there, we've even seen in Germany, for instance, quite a substantial energy shock a couple of years ago. And with some focused government policy and some efforts to come through, come up with some alternative ways of delivering that sort of meeting its energy needs, the economy has been able to come through. So I think maybe the key message is governments need to be active in responding and recognising the imposts which are there. But the world's not deglobalising. I mean, the US is imposing tariffs. So there are still plenty of opportunities to defray some of those costs.
Right, so plenty of opportunities that do lie. But thank you so much, Richard, for joining us on the show at NDTV Profit. Always a pleasure to speak to you.